Lately, I've been reviewing some of my favourite films on 4K disc, and this is another of them. This is Raiders of the Lost Ark, Steven Spielberg's 1981 classic. I think it's one of the greatest films ever made, possibly the best adventure story ever filmed, and here it is on a fabulous 4K disc. A film I have quite a history with. The first home movie I got of Raiders is the Marketing Films 400 foot extract, which came out in 1981, just after the film was released, I believe. But also here is a VHS, which came as part of a set. I'll probably show that set a bit later on. But the biggest one, the biggest collectible I have, is the full feature on Super 8. And this, I think, came from Germany and found its way to England in 1994. This was the first of two copies that came into England, and I was thankfully offered one of them, and I've been enjoying Raiders on a huge screen at home ever since. So let's take a look at this fabulous 4K disc. Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was a huge success with an estimated budget of $18 million. It's had a worldwide gross so far of $390 million. It has a running time of 1 hour and 55 minutes, absolutely perfect for this type of film, an aspect ratio of 2.4:1, and comes this time with Dolby Atmos sound. I think Raiders has been remastered into just about every sound format over the years, you name it, SDDS, DTS, all of them. But originally there were 70mm blow-up prints, so they of course had 6-track magnetic sound. So I suppose all the options have been open to the creators of these soundtracks and having the masters to go back to. Now, some of the sound in this doesn't sound quite like I'm used to, but with that 70mm, I suppose if I'd have seen that, these sounds that are currently in this 4K disc might correspond to what we heard on the 70mm prints, which by then were probably the same as the 5.1 that we came to know, because the 70mm format had changed from the 5 channels at the front to 3 at the front, 2 at the rear, and some bass as well. It was something like that anyway. Superman the movie was the first, I believe. So some of the sound may not be quite what I'm used to, having watched the Super 8 feature to death over the years, but I like it. I think it's excellent sound. Raiders always has been. It's just one of those special films, but the bass hasn't been overdone, so whatever reworking, if any, there has been, at least the bass has been kept in check, except perhaps for that very bassy scene there always was at the end with the plume going up into the sky. That sounded excellent to me too. I loved every moment of this. The image quality, now the Super 8 print has come from a rather battered 35mm general release print, so it's a pretty good representation of how I would have seen Raiders for the first time back in 1981. It wouldn't have been quite as battered as this, of course, but these prints had a hard life, some of them anyway, so it wasn't a master print, a general release print, pretty grainy. This Super 8 represents that, and this 4K does not represent that. I don't know if anything's been done to clean this up. I haven't seen a 70mm blow up or a master print, but I did go and see it again in 1993 at the NFT. Now, my wife had only ever seen my Super 8 extract reel of Raiders, so she'd never seen the full film, and I thought, well, we can't have this, can we? Got to find somewhere to take her to see Raiders. So when the National Film Theatre, which is the British Film Institute, when they put Raiders on in a series of films called First Among Sequels, I'll come to that in a moment. It was a great series of films, and in there were 2 screenings of Raiders of the Lost Ark. One of them was in NFT 1, which had a rather huge screen, so that was the one to go and see. The other screening was in NFT 2, which is a bit more like a cupboard at the time. But anyway, she thoroughly enjoyed it. We both loved the film, and then shortly after that I was offered the Super 8 print, and as I said, I've watched it to death ever since. These are our tickets for that 1993 screening at the National Film Theatre, and as much as I can't remember exactly how the film looked then, the film grain structure on this 4K disc is so fine, and that is not how it's represented on the Super 8. This is a good Super 8 print, despite coming from the rather battered 35mm. It's not perfect by any means, and there's far better out there, including the release a few months later that found its way to England, Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, which is a much better image than this, so clearly from a superior print to the one that Raiders was taken from. But the image on here is so pristine at times, so clear, that it rather spoils the magic for me a little, because all the continuity problems that you get in every film, there's not many in this, but they were so obvious to me. They'd never been before, and having just watched the Super 8 beforehand, they certainly weren't obvious on that. So that's one thing about having a perfect copy perhaps of Raiders of the Lost Ark, but I like it. The colour is absolutely perfect. It's exactly how I believe Raiders should look, and does represent how it looks on here, and also on this rather inferior 1981 cut down, which is masked widescreen rather than full frame anamorphic scope. So I couldn't be happier with this. It's far superior to the Super 8. I think the Super 8 is always going to be the copy I hark back to and want to watch, because it's so special and such magic to watch one of your favourite films on film. Now, I was aware that the special effect of the Jeep going over the cliff had been reworked, because I loved the way it looked before. It was always something that stood out. But that was on a huge screen. Raiders was seen on huge screens at the time. Today it's not. It's mainly seen on televisions. And so you can understand them reworking that one shot. It's a shame, really. Doesn't really bother me, but it's just one of the things about Raiders I loved, and it's been changed a little, but not too much. And that's possibly the same with the sound. Now, what is it that makes this film so special for me? Well, the adventure, the action, the stunts, the special effects, every single character. It goes from one brilliant sequence to the next all the way through. It barely ever lets up. It's that Steven Spielberg chap, eh? He was just at his height at the time. He can still turn them out today. But this period of his life when he was turning out these early films, just brilliant. And of course, with this he tied up with George Lucas, and the two of them together just created movie magic. Even the very end scene is historic. It's a Michael Pangrazio matte painting left on screen for just over 40 seconds. But this 4K is too perfect. Watch the actor's head as he's going along with the sack truck. I won't say what he's doing, but I don't want to give any spoilers for anyone who may not have seen Raiders, who hasn't seen Raiders. But anyway, as he turns left, watch his head, and you'll see that it goes a little transparent. And this confirms what I was saying about this needing to be seen on a huge screen, because the inadequacies have been shown up in this perfect image quality. Whereas if it was on a huge cinema-sized screen, at least 25-30 feet wide, then you probably wouldn't notice any of this. It would be disguised in the image degradation of the enlargement. But as it is, I don't think they come much better than this for 35mm cine to video transfers. There is just the 4K in this pack, no Blu-ray, so you won't get any extras on here other than 3 low-quality trailers, and the volume on those is slightly louder than the feature, so that'll annoy some people. But irrespective of that, this is a wonderful release. Now, some may find this interesting. This is the brochure sent out by the British Film Institute to all members for what was coming up at the NFT in June 1993. And there's our screening of Raiders of the Lost Ark, NFT 1. It's in a series called First Among Sequels, and just look at the films that are on offer in this series. I could actually run most of these today in here on either Super 8, some on 35mm and 4K discs, so maybe one day I should repeat this series. But it's summed up perfectly in the introduction by Mark Adams, and this last sentence, it says it all. These are not intimate small screen movies. They are roller coaster experiences that deserve to be enjoyed at the cinema. I think the only thing I'd have added is a few words at the end that says on a huge screen, but just about perfect from Mark Adams there, and I think that really does sum up how these films should be seen. Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of those, and if you've got a chance to ever see it on a huge screen, then I really do recommend you take it. I think one of the 70mm blow-ups would be the ideal, but of course pre-1982 they might have all faded a bit by now. You never know, there are probably still some perfect ones out there. Anyway, I think that brings us to the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like and perhaps consider subscribing so I'll be encouraged to carry on creating content like this. Until the next video, bye bye for now.